Michael Thornton, man. Like, I am so excited. And the funny thing is, we were just talking about before the show, we saw each other a couple weeks ago and we said, let's hang out.
Yep.
And we had the choice of maybe going for coffee or going out to lunch, but like that sucks. We're gonna get together here and create an hour's worth of content, which is like that's what the world we're in today.
It takes you to push me to actually get some actual work done. I wanted to just like kind of just kind of have a beer, but you're like, let's actually get something done.
Oh man,
that probably speaks to where you're at in the world and where I'm at in the world.
Oh man, remember I found you though.
Okay,
fair enough.
Fair enough.
Let's rehash that because I think that's important. I found you. I think just out of random like Google like of what investment mind agents are doing stuff, right? Isn't that how I ultimately found you?
Yeah, I think I might have done. It was a podcast that turned. It's just funny how things work, right? Like I do a podcast about investing, and it parlays into a relationship, and then I think you might have found me through that somehow, and here we are in the same community. I mean, both work in the same area and involved in real producers together, seeing each other at events, but. I don't know exactly what it was, but I believe it was an investing podcast.
Yeah, that's crazy. I remember I do my like Google searching like at night. Like, so I remember laying in bed thinking of what, look at you. So, and there's worse things I could be looking up, right?
We're in a basement right now, and I'm not sure.
There's worse things I could be looking up at night, I guess, but for influencers. But I found you. But then the craziest part is goes to the small world. Your neighbor or someone you know real good was actually working with us in our property management department at the time. Like, what is this crazy?
Yes. Yep, big time. Yep. Yeah, he went to school with my wife, and once we put two and two together, I'm like, yeah, that is where you work. I'm like, that's kind of odd, or maybe he had just left or whatever. But yeah, small world.
Michigan State fan, right?
Michigan State.
You went there?
I did.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
So big. You still follow him now?
Go Green. I'm terrible at following just about anything at this point. Michigan State basketball, I will follow. I worked for the team for a year, so I got to see the ins and outs of Tom Izzo and how he operates, and that was pretty fun. And so I watched Michigan State basketball. I am a Detroit sports fan where I grew up in Detroit. So I will dabble with the Cubs because my kids like the Cubs. But other than that, like when the Lions were going through the playoff, they sputtered out at the end, but I was very involved in that. But yes, so Detroit sports fan still.
I got to go to the Super Bowl last week.
Did you really?
Yeah. It's on my bucket list.
Way.
Yeah, it was amazing. I could do a whole nother episode on how amazing that was. But I was actually rooting for Detroit. They probably should have won that game against San Fran, but they kind of blew it in the end. And I love the story. I think the storyline means so much more when, Detroit, you probably quoted better than me, they haven't been in the Super Bowl, let alone won a Super Bowl in decades.
Yeah, I think before it was the Super Bowl, I think they might have won a championship, whatever that was called.
Yeah.
But ever since the Super Bowl era, they're one of 4 teams never to make it.
So I'm just telling you, I was rooting for them. But
yeah, they were America's team at the end. I mean, I think if you looked at the map of who people were rooting for, but unfortunately, I mean, they lost in the worst possible way to absolutely play 2 different halves of football.
Yeah.
The best half you can play than the worst half you can play. I would have much rather got blown out by 30 points, but that's all right.
The disappointing thing is then I realized, so San Fran won, obviously, and they're going to Super Bowl. And that was my boy. Like I loved Joe Montana, everybody, Dwight Clark, Steve Young. And then they lost to like in a very disappointing, like they had that game too. Like, so it was.
The Chiefs played the most uninspiring football to win a championship. I don't understand it, but they found a way to win every game. And I can't figure it out. But hey,
that's
they're winners.
I was telling my son that it wasn't pretty, but because they were winners, they found a way to win. And I think that translates to a lot of what, maybe you do in your business or we do in our business is like, you just got to figure it out. You got to our big slogan is make it happen. Like They made it happen.
I think it goes back to leadership too, or they look back. I think when I saw Jahmyr Gibbs fumble going back to the Lions and they panned to the sidelines and everyone had their head down like this, that is them subconsciously saying, we haven't been here before. And then when something happens with the Chiefs, I think they look back and they see Patrick Mahomes and they say, this will be all right.
We got this.
It's all subconscious too. I don't think they're actually realizing they're thinking that, but it goes back to, it's almost like more, some success leads to more and more. It becomes more easy to be successful after you've experienced it before. There's that inner belief that like, we've been here, we can do it again. It's probably no different than what you and I worked through. The level of belief is a little bit different.
I'll go to my high school football days. I feel like Al Bundy, polk high. Like, no, but for me, our coach used to always say something for every game, like leave it all on the field. Mm-hmm. And I feel I try to do that with my days now of like, I just got to like, I can't regret not doing this, not doing the next thing, not tweaking this a little better, not making that extra phone call, pushing off that phone call I should have made today to tomorrow. Like that's huge of just leaving it on the field. And I think winners will always do that.
I think you look back and you're like 10 years flies by and you start having, it's not regret, but you're like, what if I would have done a little bit more of the right activities 10 years ago? Because the growth is exponential, right? It's not linear. So the more right decisions you can make up front, it just propels you on this whole different. So I think once you come to terms with that, I think a little bit of that's maturing too. Where in the beginning, you're like, I don't really know what to do. But now that you know what the right activities are, doesn't mean we'll always do it. But the more time you're doing the right activities, I find, at least for me, is when I'm at a little bit more at peace. Like for me, it's like stress and anxiety will come in when I know I'm not doing the right activities.
Yes.
I know what to do, but it's the uncomfortable stuff that actually makes you the money, or it fills your days with productive things. I have this silly little 1-page planner of the activities I'm supposed to do each week. Texts, calls, CMAs for people, different types of, leads, databases, ads, all that stuff. At the very top of it is like a cheesy quote. I don't even know where it came from, but basically success is going to be it's going to be proportionate to the amount of time I'm willing to be uncomfortable. Because if I'm just in my sweet spot and in my zone, it means I'm probably not doing that type of outreach I need to do.
Yeah. Have you read the book, Eat That Frog First, or Eat the Frog First?
No. Is that just doing the hardest thing first?
It's kind of the idea of if the worst thing you have to do all day is eat a frog, and you wake up and you eat that frog, then everything is easier than for the rest of the day. So, but I agree. It's funny. I know when I'm getting into that zone of not doing the things I'm supposed to be doing, because I'm getting a whole bunch of other crap done. Because it's really easy to
check things off the list. The easy stuff that's tactical, but not really building your business.
Yeah. I think it's about time to go reorganize my spice cabinet or whatever. So it's hilarious how you learn about yourself, and sometimes just knowing and being very aware of your presence will help you kind of bring yourself back to that.
Yeah.
Michigan State did beat Illinois last week, and that screwed up their ranking though. So I haven't followed Illinois basketball.
Yeah, no, I haven't watched. I watched a couple games at the beginning of the year, and I'll wait till the tournament, which is right around the corner. If Michigan State even gets into it, they're struggling this year, but
yeah, we were, we connected ultimately to come together at the event a couple weeks ago. Real Producers. What is Real Producers? Can you kind of give an explanation?
Yeah, so DuPage Real Producers, it's a community of top agents and then also service partners where you basically build a community. There's events. You basically deepen your connection within the community of all the movers and shakers in real estate. And some people might say, like, why would you even spend time doing that? But I've learned, and you and I talked kind of before we got on air here, is it makes a difference to have great relationships in the industry. It just does. I think that's a big miss for people. Is I know for a fact I've won deals. It might be a tiebreaker, but if they know, I know how to close, and I'm gonna talk to my clients about what an inspection actually means and what's in scope and out of scope, and they trust that. That could be the difference of a couple $1,000s. I've had dozens of deals where maybe the second best offer, quote unquote, because it's $1,000 less. However, when the clients ask me, hey, what do you know about this client? What do you know about the agent? What do you know? Like they want to know everything. And if they feel comfortable that agent is going to prep their clients on what's appropriate, what isn't after inspection, because the reality is 20% of deals fall through during the inspection period. And it's not because it's a bad house. It's because there wasn't a professional there to lay out the expectations of how that should play out.
Yeah, no. So that's huge, because if you're representing the seller or whoever's representing the seller, usually our goal as real estate brokers is to always keep the emotion out, right? And whether it be the buyer and their emotion on those silly few things on the inspection that can be overcome pretty easily, or with a few $1,000, or the seller feeling confident or not, and that's emotion. That's a different level of emotion of like, is this the right person? Because they're almost committing. They're committing to a contract that could fall apart. And what you're saying is that relationship you build gives the listing agent that leverage to be able to, or if you're on the listing side, to be able to leverage that relationship, because you're confident of that person.
You want to know that they have integrity, that they're a straight shooter, that they have a reputation of getting to the closing table, because all that seller wants is to get to the closing table with the terms that you originally agreed to. You don't want somebody coming in having to renegotiate during the inspection period, because the inspection period are way tougher negotiations than the original negotiations. They just are. Because to your point, you have a seller who says, I've lived here for 20 years, this place is fine.
Yeah.
And you have a buyer who just received a 100-page inspection report, like the place is going to fall apart. And the truth is very much in the middle of, no, there's 2 or 3 things that are probably a big deal. However, you kind of knew that the roof was peeling off when we put our offer in, and you could see it with your eyes. That was kind of built into our offer.
Yeah.
So maybe there is 1 or 2 things we need to address, but here are the risks of doing that because you've already agreed to purchase it as is. So you're kind of tearing up the contract if you want to do that. But if you're worried about it, then you need to talk through it. So
shout out to Andy Burton at DuPage Real Producers. I love those events. I mean,
they're great.
That space we're at last week in Naperville, I forgot the restaurant name, but like what a beautiful overlook Naperville, the river downtown Naperville. Like they just know how to throw a nice party.
They throw a nice party. They have great speakers. There was a great panel that kind of talked about their experience. They get people that are at the top of their game to kind of speak into the community. And it's great to see the service partners too. So, obviously we are there, and I'm a broker, and well, you are too, but you do some other things as well. Part of the reason why you're there, but lenders are there and inspectors are there, and everybody that you need to have a successful transaction will be at an event like that.
The ironic part is I've probably gotten more out of the group networking with the other vendors. Like I got on a podcast because of one of them. I got in front of a whole other group of real estate agents because of them. It's been ironically sweet to be part of that group. And plus they're great groups, they're great parties. And then, you and me are only sitting here because we both end up at that event. So
I love it.
How long you been in there? How long you been part of DuPage Real Producers?
So I was lucky enough.
You're a feature too, I think.
Yeah, I was featured. I was on the one of the feature agents. It was January of 2023, so a year ago, and that was pretty much my introduction into DuPage Real Producers. So,
well, let me spin it into this. Mm-hmm. We are located in DuPage County, which for anyone outside of Chicago, we're a county in Chicago, but you're in DuPage County, and I tell people all the time, this is one of the best counties in the country. I mean, when it talks to medium home sales, when it talks to medium home incomes, when it talks to crime, when it talks to all those things, like it is one of the best counties, and you are one of the top brokers in the entire county. Like that's huge. Like how does that make you feel when I say that?
Yeah,
I guess you are one of the top dogs in one of the top counties in the country in your space.
That feels good. I'm wondering where all my money went. I think I have 5 kids, but no, I think that does feel really good. It is a great place to live too. So I live in Wheaton, which is in the heart of DuPage, and DuPage County, to your point, low crime, amazing schools, amazing amenities. Where I grew up in Michigan, if you wanted to go play at the park, I mean, it was a beautiful place too, but you'd go to the local elementary school. I mean, I have 10 parks, world-class parks within 5-minute walk of my house. It's insane. We have Rice Pool that looks like Typhoon Lagoon, and it's just part of the Wheaton Park District. The facilities are insane, and that's just one of many towns that are like that. So I think, our tax is high here. Yeah, probably. Are they high for what you get? Maybe not. We have metro access right there. You have quaint downtowns, tons of restaurants. Things are very walkable, and again, that's much of Chicagoland. I mean, Chicago is one of the best places in the world to live.
But I think people miss yes, taxes, they're higher. You have to pay them every year, and they don't. And you could contest them, but it's very tough, especially in DuPage County. At least the taxes are pretty consistent. I look at Cook County, I look at DuPage County. At least DuPage it's a little more consistent, whether it be an investor or a homeowner. But there's an offset in that price. That price tag that you might pay for a $700,000 home in Wheaton might come with a certain property tax number, but that same house in any other major city is going to be 1.5 to 2 times more than what you're getting in a place.
A good
like
example
DuPage.
of that. Well, I think it does right size to basically
Right size,
the monthly to what the think about even Downers Grove. So should a house in Downers Grove be more expensive than Wheaton or Glen Ellen? It's right there with Glen Ellen, even maybe a little bit higher, and that's because they have such low taxes. Don't ask me why, but they do. They have very low taxes. But what happens is that just pushes up property values because people are thinking about their monthly, as they should, because that's really what matters, right? What does $3,000 a month get me? So to your point, just on a local level, you even see that happening between towns.
You know what's crazy? no consumer or no human does that with anything else in their life. No one's like, you know what, I got this much budget, I could probably afford this much car. Like, you know, they just like with a house, they really max that out. And that's something that in all of our spending habits, we don't do that anywhere else. You ever think about that?
It is interesting. The psychology behind that's very interesting. I mean, everyone has it's because what they get approved for is way more probably than most people should spend on housing. And so some people will kind of just say, hey, if I'm approved for that, I must be able to afford it. And we know that's not the case. But people are all over the board on that.
Yeah, it's just crazy. No one else maxes out like, oh man, yeah, I can afford this much in country club memberships.
Yes, yes.
Is there a prerequisite for the amount of kids you have to have in Wheaton? Because I feel like you, Kyle, all these other people I know in Wheaton have like 5+
There's
kids.
something in the water. I don't know. It's interesting. I think
it's a dry town on Sunday. Maybe no one drinks and they just.
I don't think so. It used to be a dry town altogether. I mean, I think that it's a very different. It used to be known as like, because there's so many churches and different things like that. It is probably a little bit different than even 15, 20 years ago when you think about it. A lot of people move out of the city and then the identities of the towns change a little bit, I think, over time. But yeah, we have 5 kids. So it's great to be a top broker, but I have no other choice. I literally have no other choice. I have a lot of mouths to feed.
Do you know, Wheaton obviously is the government center for DuPage County. Do you know that it was supposed to be Naperville at one time and the two fought back and forth and actually someone from Wheaton actually burned down what they're building in Naperville?
I heard that. That goes way back. We actually did a little video on that way back when, and I forget all the details of it, but it was one of those things where, Lindsay from my team's like, this is a really interesting story. And so, type it out and read it once, and I've already forgot all the details of it, but I do remember that, some drama.
I always think like we always get amazed by the politics today, but those politics have been happening for as long as politics been around. Yeah. Like they literally burned down the Naperville courthouse that they're trying to make the city center.
If you want that land, go get it.
Yep. No, it's amazing. Oh man. So networking, you do the DuPage Real Producers. What other networking are you doing out there to grow your business?
I'm a big prospector and kind of some of the stuff that happens naturally. So I know that I want to be involved with what my kids are doing. And I've also looked back in the course of my business and said, look, if I coach the baseball team, if I'm involved with church, if I'm a leader in these different capacities, and then I'm also active in real estate and maybe I'm on social media and maybe we follow each other, I just sort of realized that they'll ask me eventually, how's the market? What's going on in real estate? Everyone's interested in real estate. It's amazing the stats of people that still look at houses after they buy a house because they just want to see what's going on in the marketplace. We're all fascinated with it. So I think naturally it works out. And I realized if I'm just active in the things that I already love to do, and then if I can just answer the question effectively of how is the market when I'm asked, a lot of business will come your way. You have to show people that you might know something more than what they can find out on Zillow. You have to show you're competent. But if you can do that, I think you can be intentional with the things you already want to do and that you already want to be involved with and still build a business around that.
When we had you on the podcast, I think you said something along the lines of, as long as you're not an idiot and you can answer that question, you can be successful.
Exactly right. Well, it's true. So that's the beauty of social media, though. That's the beauty of content is if you are intentional about having that type of community, which is limited, of course. It's, hey, liking this, comment that, but it's enough where people see that you're in the game. Once you do run across them in person, it makes all the difference in the world. It's not that they're going to buy something because they saw a great video online that you did, but it opens up the conversation where it's kind of a warm entry into, hey, how's real estate? And then you start talking about that. And if I'm able to ask the right questions, we might uncover whether there's actually a lead there or not.
But what I heard though from you is you have to get yourself out there though. Like you can't just post and then they hope people come.
That's the temptation. And I have to check myself there too, is the content's not the end game. That should be middle of the funnel, where then deeper down the funnel, which is where all the success is, if you can get there, is to have real estate conversations with people. So when I track the number of contacts per week, and for me, how I define a contact is a real estate conversation. So that could be a text, it could be, but it has to be a two-way conversation about real estate. That is the number one thing that will lead to appointments, and appointments lead to business. But that is like the number one thing that I kind of track to know how I'm doing. And so you can do that a million different ways.
Yeah, no, you can. You've spoken in the past, and I can see it in your marketing. You really try to drive customer service, customer experience, and you have a pretty good team that has a pretty good culture, right? I think the two, you have to have a good culture in order to have them provide the good experience. As the leader of your team, like what do you do? Like what's the secret sauce to not necessarily say we're going to do it, but to actually get the results and get people to actually have those good feelings?
Yeah. A couple different things. One, it is a big deal for somebody to hire you to sell their home. It's a big investment. We believe in what we offer, but ultimately I want to feel good at night that we provided them something that was worth paying for. So that's number one. It's selfish. It's like, I want to feel good about what the heck they just paid for. And I want them to know that like not every realtor is the same. I want them to leave that like, man, he might be more dialed in than the next person. That'll make me feel good that we serve them well. And then more tactically speaking, you have to have a process that's laid out, systematic. It can't be, we're going to do this off memory. It just doesn't work. We have to know what our thoughtful touch points are, because we know that if they have a good experience and if they were to become a raving fan, that's the best marketing that you could ever have. It's going to take so much more effort to find the next client if you're not giving a great customer experience, because then you're constantly starting back over. But if you can just treat people well and they're going to actually share the good news about you versus me telling everybody how good we are, like, what do you think's more impactful, right?
No,
like,
for sure. It's the raving fans that ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, well, how about for you? I mean, you manage how many properties?
1,500 for about 500 clients.
Okay. And you have hundreds of reviews, and it takes people to give a review. They have to really hate it or really love what they've experienced.
Right. There's not many 2, 3s.
There's no, so it's like a 1 or a 5, and you have like all 5s. So what do you do? How do you get people?
It's funny. We got a 4 last week, and I'm like, am I upset or is this still good? Like, I wasn't sure. Cause
that must have been a mistake.
Do I text him and say, give me one more? Like, cause it was a positive review, but he gave me a 4. So it's like, you just don't get those 2, 3 or 4s. But, for us, I think it's being very intentional. I think, we've grown now. So we have 60 people that are managing these properties, and it's easy when it's 2 or 3 people and you guys all started and you guys all were very scrappy and you did whatever it took or whatever. And now it has to be a lot more intentional. It has to be intentional without being robotic, right? Like, I could build into a process that at this point you send out an email and here's your template.
Yep.
But that template has to have some variability to it, to that person's specific situation, to be able to know you care. Now it can serve in the process as a point of like, hey man, we got to make sure we stop and appreciate. But I think that trick is one, getting everyone to drive to the same goal of that experience. Because for us, for property management, what we talk about in our team huddles and so forth is, if the tenant's happy, and the client's usually going to be happy because the tenant's paying, they're complying, they're renewing. As a landlord, people moving out is the expensive part. So if we could just get people to stay on average another like 7 or 8 months, we figured out that is ultimately millions of dollars over I think it was a 9-year period that our clients are saving by just us getting them to stay on average X amount of months more. So there's a lot of math. I like to figure out some of those things and kind of use that as goalposts for our team. But ultimately it's being intentional while still being genuine.
So what I heard is you have a huge operation, you have lots of people, you need to systemize it, but there has to be a human element, is what I heard.
Yes.
Like, you have to know a little bit about the situation, a little bit about the people. They have to have a sense that you care, because if they sense that, then their guard comes down. And then you're able to kind of have a working relationship with one another. Yeah.
Well, you think about this though. Our property management is tough in a couple different ways. It's a product, the house or condo or wherever they live in, or apartment building, and it's a service. It's I got a problem, I got a maintenance, I need my lease renewal, like all that stuff. So we are a product and a service. And then on top of it, so that's your first part right there. Now, think about a typical property manager. They have to be very detailed, and they have to have to also provide customer service. That's usually two different personalities most of the time.
Heck yeah.
You probably have on your staff, you probably have you and maybe someone else that's the very outgoing, bubbly, like face of the company. And then you have someone handling the details. So one thing that we've really gotten into nitty gritty, we use predictive index, which is a psychosomatic kind of testing on everybody, kind of what their strengths are. If they're bigger, like in person versus higher detail. And we try to make sure we put the right people in the right seats, that if this is the person that's going to be the first person talking to everybody that moves in, we want to make sure they have the highest bubbly, want to win type attitude, and the details and some of the process is not the most important thing in that moment. So I think we've taken a very intentional view on who touches what in the process even. So
no, that's smart. It's the right people in the right seats, the right skills in the right seats. You just can't hire somebody you relate to or you like, right?
Yeah.
That's tough. That's tough.
That was the beginning of the business where you just had all your, I think it was more of like, I got a place. I'd probably have a beer with you on this Friday afternoon.
Yes.
Like, let's just do this. Like,
all right, let me ask you about that. So leading that big of a team, how do you manage what is your mentality on managing performance? Is it like you always hear, slow to hire, quick to fire? Like, how does that look? Is there a process so like people understand that they're falling short and there's an improvement plan? Like, how do you work somebody into a different seat if you know they're not the right fit? And how does that work?
Yeah. So when it comes down to managing, we really measure, we follow EOS, and what we do is we manage based on our core values and our GC Realtor experience, and if they're delivering it, whether it's a plus minus or a minus. And that's how we make sure they're the right fit or the right seat, and measure their, we don't measure so much their output, because here's what you're supposed to do. And this is and it's really how you deliver it and how fast you're delivering and what way you're delivering and how you're interacting with everyone else. And because property manager is pretty linear in the process. If you think about tenant moves in, tenant has issues, there's maintenance in there, tenant moves out, you have a bunch of activities happen there. You get the place ready to go. Then the leasing tick comes in and they do what they do. And then someone moves back in, you start back over. So, but in there you have 4 or 5 different departments, including finance, all that stuff. But so it ends up being just kind of how handoffs happen and how people do things. So there ends up being a lot of technology involved in some of that, and the handoffs, and making sure the process flows the right way. But in the end of the day, if we want to make sure we're delivering what we expect as far as our core values and so forth.
Can I ask you about how your week's set up? So, you have property management, brokerage, you're investing. So are you working solely with or do you have your own portfolio that you're building personally or with partners within your company here? Or is it solely working on investments for clients?
It is all of the above. So I have, within the property management company, I run our sales, marketing, and onboarding side of things. A spinoff of that became the podcast, but the podcast kind of took on its life its own. And that's been really fun, because the podcast has kind of built this community that we have events on. It's supposed to feed the property management side,
sure.
Which it does. Obviously, if you're researching us and we're tied to the podcast that everyone likes and is happy about, and it's helped them achieve success, then that makes it easier. But you have time into that. And then I sit on the leadership team for the company, which then takes me into different coaching or different mentor type roles within the company. So been doing this 20 years now. And my role in this company, I have a couple tactical things that I do in a department that I run, but I really want to help. I'm 40, I just turned 43 last week. And I really want to help the people in the 20s or even the 30s, whatever, anyone that's in an earlier stage of their career. They can be older than me. It doesn't really matter. Help them kind of get to the next level that they're trying to get to, whether it be in this company or in life. And I think that's became my why. The first why was, I got to pay the bills.
Yeah, for sure.
I got to feed the kids. I got to make sure the wife is happy and so forth. And I kind of had this a few years ago. I was like, okay, we got the bills paid. Now what am I doing? And it turned into kind of mentoring and helping other people achieve their goals. And that's been a big thing for me. And I think that's what the podcast takes on in itself as well too.
So how much of your time would you say are you vetting out any investments yourself? So what part of the investment arm are you involved in?
Yeah. So, we obviously did a lot in between 08 and 18, and, we've sold a lot of stuff off. We bought some industrial buildings. So I think we have 8 industrial buildings and an office building. And, we have an active team that's always looking for that. That I don't deal too much with that, but my money's involved in that.
Sure.
I am also in the I also have some FOMO right now. I feel that, we just talked about how great DuPage County is. Like, why am I not buying as many single family homes under 350,000 that comes in that 0.08% rule? It used to be 2% rule. Now it's 0.08% rule. Why am I not buying as many as I can over the next few years? Because those become the $500,000 starter homes in 10 years, $500,000 starter homes. These are little ranches that were built in the mid-century. So, but yeah, that's and that actually turns into a hobby where it's like, all right, so how can I partner with other young investors and start buying more of those and so forth?
So if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking the same exact thing, I'm thinking to myself, there's so much pressure on price that will take years and years and years to alleviate. I mean, after 2008 and 9, we were building 1.3 million homes a year. We weren't building that anymore. People lost their businesses. They were building 1,000 homes. They started building 100 homes, whatever. We're gapped 3.5 to 4 million homes. Then you throw fuel on the fire with the Airbnb investing boom, where 20% of all purchases in 2020, 21, in the first half of 22 were investors. Rent, buy to rent, Airbnb, second homes. That puts more pressure as they buy something, they don't release anything back into the inventory pool. And then you have the lock-in effects of the rates doubling overnight, which there's a reason why we wouldn't normally do that, because it creates this lock-in effect. So it had the inverse effect, where there's no velocity of homes hitting the market. So I look at, okay, what's the solution? Well, where we're at, it's a little different than Austin or Orlando or some areas that are sprawling towns where you just keep building further out. We don't have that here. You have to go to a different world to get new construction. Like, you're talking like Elburn.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we're a little bit landlocked. So what do you do? Like, if I could own 1 million homes in this area, I would. Because when rates double overnight, we still appreciate at 5% a year. So what does that mean for this year? 5, 6, 7, 8%?
Well, I'm struggling right now with what's the right price. Like, let's just say a single family home in Wheaton. You see a few the smaller ones, 3.1s, 3.1.5 going on the market for 350. There's a handful of them, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but you could probably go in and rent those out for $2,700 to $3,000 right now. Is that a good deal? Because that rent's going to be $3,300 next year, and that price is going to be $400.
That's my struggle. Is the cash flow arm is almost like you have to put so much more equity in the deal, and that's where I'm stuck.
But is it do you just worry about breaking even at this point? That's kind of where I've been thinking.
I never went into this for the cash flow. I want cash flow to more than cover any expenses, and I want to build a little slush fund that if I do have a capital expenditure down the road, I can cover it. For me, with real estate status, I want the depreciation, I want the principal pay down, and I want the appreciation. It's a very long-term burn, because if I can put in $100,000 there versus $100,000 into the market, even at a great return in the market of 8%, I can still stretch that 100 way further, even without any cash flow. So I'm not, but the problem is.
And the fifth one is you're hedging against inflation too.
You're hedging against inflation.
Yep. So that's your fifth.
That's your fifth benefit. But my issue is now it slows the scaling of it, because I have to put so much more equity into each deal to not be underwater from a monthly perspective. So I need to be 40% into this deal instead of 15 or 20, so that the cash flow can cover those expenses. So for me, my bottleneck is, where do these funds come from to scale quicker? And I know there's solutions, and I'd love to talk to you about it. But for me, that's the problem.
So you get into, so I'm kind of in this quandary now of like, is this the opportunity? If it is, I guess that will motivate me in different other areas of my life. Like, all right, so if this is really the play where I'm going to put 40% into these $350,000 homes, and in a couple of years it'll work itself out and I'll be positive cash flow, then that's going to probably motivate me to double down on whatever I'm doing on the property management side that's creating that cash flow. Maybe for you, it'd be like double down your marketing so you could get 3, 4 more. You do 2, 3 more deals. That's it. Every probably 3 deals you do would probably equal another down payment for a place in addition. So I don't know. I think me trying to figure out what the right move is. And the problem is, this is the analysis paralysis part that we always tell people not to get stuck in. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. And I've probably been here, actually, I've been thinking about this for about the last year and a half. And I'm actually, now I'm like actively like putting offers in and trying to figure some of this out.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And I almost, I think there's another opportunity with these cosmetic flips. I think what's interesting is we have the lowest inventory we've ever had in the history of time. So DuPage County has never went under 2,000 homes for sale at a given moment. And at the end of November, we dipped under like 1995. The end of December, 1455.
Wow, that's crazy.
I mean,
Where are we at now? It's
I
a
haven't
crazy low
seen
number.
end of January numbers. I'm going to see it tomorrow on
Okay.
a call that I'm on. Our brokerage provides these numbers. And last year, what's scary is last year we never had an inventory build. So we were around like 1,000 homes for sale. 2,000 homes for sale at any given moment. But we never really had that build. So if we start the year where we're at now and we don't have that build, that's going to be insane pressure for anybody trying to buy a home. And obviously that's going to drive up price even more.
But this is not going to change for years. Like to
That's
your
what I mean.
point you're making,
No-
they're not adding the stuff and they're adding homes 20 at a time. Like
No.
that's not gonna change anything.
That's what I mean. I think you're going to see appreciation 5 to 10% ongoing for years and years and years and years to come.
Part of me is nervous, and I'll say this out loud because I don't think anyone has the chops enough to really take me up on this thought. But I think I almost feel part of my fear right now is this might be the last like handful of years where you actually have the opportunity to get in and invest, where it's just going to become so high that $350,000 home in Wheaton, damn, I wish I would have picked up 10 of those.
Right.
Like right now we're questioning, should we get one? And now
Right.
like, I mean, you're always in hindsight looking at things and you have to make a call. But some of the stuff, like if you do the right thing, you necessarily can't lose. But at the same time, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Here's my thought looping back to cosmetic flips. So we have the lowest inventory we've ever had, but we've had the average days on market has crept up considerably. So what it's saying is there's very few houses for sale, but the houses for sale are not very desirable. They're either overpriced or nobody took the time and effort to fix them up because they're like, who cares? I can get whatever I want for my house.
Yeah.
And so you have actually some properties out there with high days on market. I'm not interested with the construction costs where they are to do something that requires roof, siding, windows. There's only few, as you know better than anybody, there's only a handful of projects you can do really with a positive return on investment. We're talking bathroom refresh, kitchen refresh, continuous flooring where you had nasty carpet, landscaping, freshen up the first impression, light fixtures, things like that. So is there an opportunity to go in and instead of doing a 6-month flip for $200,000, 90 days in and out, $60,000, $70,000, and it's right back on the market in 90 days?
I see. I want to hold it.
Well, that too. You could do that, right?
You could
do that. You could do that depending on the house and if it makes sense from a rental perspective.
For me, I would like to not have any more taxable income. I imagine you probably would love that problem too, less taxable income.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I think that would help fund scaling the rentals quicker. Because that is my big bottleneck is like, yeah, can I buy 1 a year, 2 a year, maybe? How do I pick up 10 this year?
Well, I think, so a lot of people have, I get a lot of people come to me like, hey, I'm going to do flips as a means to hold. And I always kind of tell them like, you're better off finding a partner to get a couple of these done while you're trying to build your capital to either partner more on these things or simply do it on your own. So I would rather see you partner with somebody and hold them than that's just taxable money.
I'm selfish too, because I think there's also an opportunity, to create your own inventory in a way though.
If you're going to go out and are you saying going after like,
what if you had buyers that are looking in specific neighborhoods?
I agree 100%.
That are weak from the standpoint of they're 3.5% down FHA, which is no problem. But sellers look at them like they're, like got two heads because they have cash offers left and right. It's like that person's never going to buy a house.
We are working. So we have the brokerage here as well too. And we just fired up, it's a straight up Cerrito sells. And it's a team that we have on the Northwest side, but they have a really big focus on the Northwest side, but the creating your inventory is everything right now. And you do a little of the outbound marketing. I think you're doing some, do I remember correctly? You're doing some Google ads, you're doing some stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm trying to do a lot of SEO stuff right now. I'm doing some YouTube ads for just Wheaton. Kind of, here's what makes us different. That'll be YouTube in-stream ad. There's actually a really cool strategy I just learned about through Tom Ferry coaching, which I'm part of. It's a dynamic search ad where you can basically bid on the keywords for an address. Let's just say you're interested in Roselle, that you want to build your business in Roselle. You have a VA go every single week and scrub the active list of homes for Roselle, the addresses. And those become the words that you the keywords that you're bidding on, which are much cheaper than, you know, Best Realtor and
Yeah, yeah.
Roselle, which are going to be a fortune,
Yep.
and you're going to rank very low on. And basically the whole strategy is to help basically intercept traffic for Zillow, Trulia, where you're bidding on the keywords of new listings. So as people see that new listing pop up, hey, what was that on Main Street? Like, you know, 123 Main Street, they might pop it in. And obviously, if they're popping it in right into Zillow, you might not intercept it. But if they pop it into Google, you would then be bidding on that keyword to go to the top of the list. They click it, and it goes to the IDX on your site where you can capture a lead.
I like that.
It's a very interesting strategy, right? So things like that I'm looking into. I think, how do I increase the come list me calls? People that are like, hey, I saw you, and, you know, can we have a conversation? I'm trying to build the long term, and you have to balance it with the very near term outreach as well. So we still try to do open houses and things like that. And there's some other ideas that we've implemented, but I think that's a good long-term strategy.
Another thing that we did for a while, I think we still do it on a couple of them, but we just put our competitors' names in there. So if someone like might have heard of the other person,
oh, that's smart.
They'll put it in there, and then we'll still at least pop up under them as another option. Maybe
That's
that they
smart.
didn't realize was out there. So maybe that's a realtor tip. You figure out the top other your competitors and pop them in there.
Yeah.
So
question for you: all the people in your network. Let's say somebody wants to build a real estate fund, and they want to go capitalize on opportunities that they see in the marketplace, and they need a backing to do that. Who's that partner? Is it private? Is it private lending? Are you going to your database and talking to friends and family on that? Or do you have lenders that you would talk to about that?
Well, I think you said it already. So many people love real estate investing. It's really easy to, my wife said, like, how do you always end up talking to everybody about real estate? I'm like, I didn't even say anything. Like they said it to me. Like, so it's really easy to get people excited about it, right? And there's so many people that want to do it. That's why they go pay $40,000 to become this, and they go nowhere with it. But I was telling somebody in my office today, I said, there's people that have the money and want to do it, but don't have the time. And there's people that have the time, that don't have the money, that are willing to go run around and do the things that have to happen. And I think those are the perfect partnerships where there could even be a mentee type mindset with some of that stuff. And, you know, that's if you're going to do 10, you could probably get away with 10, find one or two of those people and do 10 a year. If you're going to go beyond that, you know, you start looking at fund type stuff. But I think, you know, we've skirted the fund side of things many times where, you know, private offering memorandums and stuff like that. And I don't know, I try to keep it one or two of our, you know, we have a couple partners on our industrial buildings, but try to keep it just kind of
not too many
limited.
cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah. You know, I think anyone that's ever had a bad partner, it just limits your risk, right? You know, that one partner that needs to get out, and because they're getting divorced, and it screws up 4 other people.
Yes.
Like, so anytime you do that, now that's always the line you walk of how fast can you grow and how much risk can you reduce yourself by. But so if you get more debt versus equity, sometimes with that will help limit the amount of partners you need then. So, well, man, this was awesome, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Man, like
this is great.
So this is the modern day, like hanging out, like
I
two
love it.
people, man. This is way cooler than, and we got an hour's worth of awesome content that we could chop up and
I love
send
it.
out there. So
This is great.
Dude.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it.